This is the number 84 splitting machine from CS Osborne and Co. And of the three machines that they produce, this is the largest. This has the 8-inch blade. Both the 86 and the 86A have a 6-inch blade, which is much shorter. We are going to look at sharpening this blade. The principles in sharpening the 8-inch blade remain the same for sharpening the 6-inch blades. We will tackle the 8-inch because that's the larger one. If you can deal with this, you can deal with the 6 inches. The first thing that we will need to do is take the blade from the machine. Using a bar or a screwdriver, loosen the two blade screws and then remove the blade from the machine. The distinctive thing about this style of blade is it is only ground on one side. We have a large tapering section here where we've taken the steel down from its full width, which is close to ½ an inch, down towards the sharp bit, and then there's a secondary grind at the end there. On the back of the blade it's flat. Let's take it to a stone and see how we deal with this. The stone that I'm using is a 6-inch oil stone. In this situation, for this blade, bigger is better. If you can have or already have a bigger stone, it will be much easier to deal with the blade. It's an oil stone, but oil stones, water stones, can wear, and they often wear towards the middle, so we have two high points at either side. And we are trying to grind a blade on the flat section on the back that's about 50mm, 2 inches wide. So one of the most important things we need to know is there any wear on this stone where the steel comes away from the stone, or the stone drops away. And if we were to put this steel onto this stone, we can see at the cutting edge, for the full length of the stone, the steel meets the stone, meaning this stone is flat, so it's good for this purpose. That's important to remember. The second thing is, it's an oil stone, so before we work, we'll apply a little bit of oil to the stone. And we'll just spread that around so it's even and consistent throughout the length of the stone, and we'll let that soak in. First and foremost, we're going to grind the back of the blade. So we've applied a little bit of oil to our oil stone to keep the steel moving. There are two ways of doing this. The first is to start at one end of the blade, slide across the blade and go up the length of the stone. We can come back doing the same thing and then repeat. So we grind in a diagonal fashion. Doesn't matter which side of the blade you start on, or indeed which end of the stone, as long as you cover the length of the stone to keep the stone even and the length of the blade. Now that's sliding across very smoothly. It doesn't sound like it needs an awful lot of work on the back. Before we move on, we'll look at the other way. When we put the blade onto the stone, we can see that the steel is making contact with the full length of the stone. So the stone is flat. In which case we can then simply slide the blade up and down the stone. And this will keep the blade flat on the stone and grind any points that it needs to. Now we can hear that is sliding across very smoothly. There is the possibility the back needs no more work. We can stop there. Turning the blade over, having sharpened the back for a few strokes, we will have a feel, taking the finger away from the cutting edge, not towards it. I'm feeling for any burrs that may have appeared on the front of the grind. Your knife may be sharp, but it may be the burr that's preventing it from cutting anything. Removing that will help. Another indicator is we can look at the blade, and it's very unlikely I'm going to be able to get this on camera, but what we're looking for when we look down on the blade is any shiny parts. There may be the burr bending over or flat parts of the blade that need grinding. At the moment I don't see an awful lot. So we turn the blade over and we are now looking at grinding this secondary bevel right at the tip. So we will lay the blade flat. It's currently sitting on the large angle that tapers the steel down towards the cutting edge, and this is where your skill needs to be a little higher. We are going to lift the blade up to find that angle. So with the blade flat on the stone, we can see there's a gap. The secondary bevel is lifting the cutting edge up from the stone. So we need to now lift our blade up, and we will then feel that flat edge. We can find the angle. From where I am sitting, that looks to me to be about 17 degrees. So lifting the blade up to find that flat spot on the bevel, we will try and keep this angle consistent throughout. We can now begin to grind the blade. Let's move my hands away for the length of the blade. Again, trying to use the whole stone so we don't end up with any particular wear in one spot. Having cleaned the oil from the blade, taking away any little iron filings or grindings that could damage the strop, we're ready to give it a strop. We're going to work away from the blade, not towards it. Anything coming towards this blade is going to cut. So we're going to start at the back and push the strop over the blade, trying to maintain that 17 degree angle as we go. Again, we're feeling and listening for any points that the blade seems to be catching or feels rough on the leather. That may still be a burr. Burrs may still appear. There may be one that I can't feel with my finger, and it's not until I begin to come over the blade with the strop that I begin to feel it turn. However, on this occasion, this strop is going over the blade very, very nicely, very, very smoothly, and we'll turn it over and do exactly the same on the back. Stropping does not sharpen the blade. We've sharpened it. Stropping takes care of those microscopic little burrs that may be sitting on the edge of the steel that would prevent you from cutting smoothly and nicely. The strop is flying over this very, very smoothly, very nicely. That appears to be rather sharp. Very, very happy. One option you have available to you is, if the blade just needs a little bit of maintenance and doesn't need sharpening, which is how it's going to spend the vast majority of its life, it's only really going to need sharpening if you damage it or use it without maintaining it for any length of time. We can spin the blade out, and then we'll just tighten up that blade screw there. Whilst it's in this position, bearing in mind your splitter will be bolted to the bench, we can now just ride the strop over the blade, giving a little bit of a hone, a little bit of maintenance. Do exactly the same from the underneath, and that will keep your blade in nice working condition, nice and sharp. And then we can pop it back into place. Part of the process is, let's give it a test. How beautiful is that? Hope that helps, folks.